Michigan and TCU set to get after it in the Fiesta Bowl semifinal style. College football playoff, going to be an absolute blast. In games like this, where the lights are the brightest, the stage is the biggest, sometimes it's the supporting actors that end up being the difference makers in these sort of situations. So I got a couple for you from both TCU and Michigan who I think could be X factors in this game. The first guy I'm looking at, Will Johnson, the cornerback for Michigan. He was also someone we featured in our key battles for this game, but I would expect him to be lined up across from Quentin Johnston for TCU. Now, this is interesting because Will Johnson matches up from a size perspective relatively well. About 6'3", helps across the board most of the year for Michigan, lining up against big receivers, so this is no new task for him. The thing is, though, Quentin Johnston's an absolute freak show. Okay, he's going to play in the NFL, likely for a really long time, and likely wreak havoc against a lot of those other teams. So Will Johnson, only a freshman, will have his work cut out for him. The reason why I think this is interesting is because with Quentin Johnston, I don't think shutting him down is super realistic. Like, if you finish the game and you're Will Johnson and Quentin Johnston only has 70 yards and no touchdowns, like, I think that's not a bad day at the office. Now he got 70 yards against you, so you didn't obviously take away Quentin Johnston from the game plan, but being able to minimize that, just having it not be Quentin Johnston beating you if you're Michigan, I think that would be huge for Michigan and help them control the tempo of the game offensively. Because if Quentin Johnston just goes off during the game, it's likely that TCU is getting some quick scores. They're likely going right around 30 points if Quentin Johnston has himself a day. If not, TCU maybe has to run the ball a little bit more. Maybe they have to dink and dunk a little bit more. I think that would be the world that would favor Michigan. Also worth noting, Max Duggan, extremely talented quarterback. When you watch him on tape, if that first read isn't there, he trusts his freakish athleticism, and he likes to get downhill and run the football. Now, if you're Michigan and you take away that first read, which a lot of the time is Quentin Johnston, you allow then that front seven that you have to go and hunt a little bit more. So it would allow that front seven to impact the game even more so, being able to get into chase mode after Max Duggan. But again, it starts with Will Johnson being able to win that matchup, being an X factor in this game, and stopping Quentin Johnston on the outside. Very, very important. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, we would love to have you at the party. The Fiesta Bowl is right around the corner. We're not done talking about this game. We're going to predict it. We're going to break it down for you in its entirety here in the very near future on this channel. We've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 of you Michigan Wolverine fans join us. We're so glad you're here. TCU fans, y'all started pouring in as well. If you haven't yet subscribed, we want you at the party. Follow me on the socials, at JD Pickell on Twitter and on Instagram. A lot of interaction we have there that we can also do here. An X factor for TCU that I could foresee is D. Winters, the linebacker. Now, he has 7.5 sacks on the year for TCU. That's leading the entire team. And the Michigan offensive line is really good, and they have very much so teed it up for J.J. McCarthy to have the success that he's had, and J.J. McCarthy has cashed in a big way. But with young quarterbacks, the hope would be to speed up that shot clock. And credit Michigan, there hasn't been a game where J.J. McCarthy's been running for his life every other play. But D. Winters, with his ability to get after the quarterback historically to this point in the year, if he can make J.J. McCarthy just a little bit uncomfortable, just get him off his launch point a little bit more frequently than he would like to, well, then I think you open it up to, well, is there a couple turnovers there for the young quarterback? We haven't really seen that signature, ugly, young quarterback kind of game from J.J. McCarthy. Does it exist? Potentially, does it exist in this game? I think if you want to have a chance to see that high turnover game from Michigan, you would have to find a way to apply pressure. The best guy to do that, D. Winters for TCU. So speeding up the shot clock will be really important for that Horned Frog defense. And for J.J. McCarthy, how he manages that will tell a lot of the story in this game. So D. Winters being an X factor, I think the story writes itself. Now, Colston Loveland, the tight end for Michigan, is an X factor that we actually talked about in the Ohio State game. And guess what? Caught a big-time touchdown pass from J.J. McCarthy to open up the second half. So, yeah, he was an X factor. I think he's an X factor again in this game. Big boy, 6'5", 230. If you're TCU, I don't know that you have somebody that you like in a matchup with him. He's, like I said, a pretty big frame, but he can also run. And what Michigan's going to want to do with him is connect a lot on play action. whether it's a corner route on 3rd and 3, whether it's a flat route on 4th and goal. There is going to be a lot of different moments within this game where off play action, they're looking for Colston Loveland. How does TCU address that? Do they put somebody over the top? Do they take a guy out of the box and try and man up with Colston Loveland? I don't know, but I'm just saying I think he's an X factor from a pre-snap perspective in terms of how you have to line up and guard him, and then also how much you want to gamble in those play action scenarios and how much coverage you don't give him. So Colston Loveland, from a matchup perspective and from a personnel perspective across the board, will impact this game, and I fully expect him to have a solid day of receiving in this one, to say the least. So keep an eye on him. Schoonmaker obviously will be another X factor, but I think Colston Loveland's the one to watch based on the versatility he brings to the table and the issues he can present for you if you're TCU. So the last X factor that I'm telling you about in this game is wide receiver Tay Barber. Now, Tay Barber has been a stick of dynamite for the Horned Frogs. 17.5 yards of reception. Y'all, that's ridiculous. Like, if there's a big play happening for TCU, a lot of the times it's going to Tay Barber. 34 receptions, close to 600 yards in the year, 4 touchdowns. Here's why I think he's the X factor. For Will Johnson, I don't think it'll be just Will Johnson on Quentin Johnston, if you hear what I'm saying here. I think it would be irresponsible of Michigan as a defense to say, let's go man on man, our freshman, against one of your top receivers, if not one of the top receivers in the country. You may see some of that, but I think a lot of the time there will be a safety valve plugged in there where there's a safety help over the top. You can't have it all the time, but I think you'll see it some of the time. So when Michigan allocates extra resources to taking away Quentin Johnston, can Tay Barber step up and make those explosive kind of plays? When he has man-on-man coverage, when it's just Tay Barber against Michigan, can he step up to the plate? Because Quentin Johnston has been taken away. When you take away one guy, typically it leaves one less guy to cover your other receivers. And so Tay Barber will have a couple of opportunities in this game. Can he make good on them? Explosive plays will be paramount for TCU in this football game. Because if you don't have some quick strike scores against Michigan, they're just going to hand the ball off and be that weight on your shoulders that will eventually cause you to crumble in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Like J.J. McCarthy says, they'll just have the pipes burst on you. So being able to have quick scores, especially early in the game, I think you look to Quentin Johnston, but also very much so Tay Barber. 17.5 yards reception. Just stupid. So keep an eye on him. The X factors, to recap it for you, Will Johnson going back and forth in a battle. A lot of this game with Quentin Johnston will be extremely important to how they play Max Duggan and to how much this Michigan defense is able to hold up and the tempo that TCU has to play at. On the defensive side of things for TCU, on the offensive side of things for Michigan, D. Winters, the linebacker for the Horned Frogs, is the sack leader for that unit. And if he can speed up the shot clock for J.J. McCarthy and force some pressure, throw a whole new variable into this game. Because if J.J. McCarthy, if that sped up shot clock causes him to turn the ball over more frequently than we're accustomed to seeing, you spot extra possessions for your explosive offense at TCU, and good things likely would happen with that. So how much can D. Winters impact the game is something I'm very excited to see. Colston Loveland, the tight end for Michigan, another young buck. He's going to be a big-time factor in this game, a big-time X factor, to stick with the theme of the segment. Watch for him on 3rd down in short yardage and 4th down in short yardage. I think he's also just a problem over the middle. I don't know who you match up with for him, but especially in those short yardage situations, if they go play action, Colston Loveland can make you pay if you don't address him accordingly on the back end. So keep an eye on him. Can't miss him, 6'5", 230. Lastly, Tay Barber, stick a dynamite in the slot for TCU. When Quentin Johnston gets extra coverage, extra resources allocated his way, that means there's a little less attention on Tay Barber. Tay Barber, can you make it count? When money's on the table, can you cash in? So those are your X factors. Going to be a whole lot of fun to break this one down and predict it here in the very near future. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we're going to predict it here very, very soon. Very excited for that one. Can't wait to watch that one New Year's Eve. Should be a whole lot of fun. Should be a party. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.